So have you ever wondered how ChatGPT works under the hood and also all the other large language models out there? In this video here, we're going to dive into the theoretical part and how the models work under the hood in a very beginner-friendly way. So we're going to talk about the architecture, how the models actually learn, what type of data is needed, how do we fine-tune it and convert it into a chatbot and also an assistant. We're going to cover all of it, what does it require to train, how are they used, what can be used for, and also what are some of the disadvantages and how do we get around that. It's Nicola from Verpex. Let's get into it. So first of all here, let's just start with what is a chatbot and a chat assistant on a high level. How do we get a base model and how can we fine tune an assistant? This can both be a general model as ChatGPT, but it can also be a more specific one fine tuned on your use cases. So base model, we need a huge data set. So we're talking about internet scale data set. We take the whole internet. You can just imagine as we take the whole internet, all the text, even images and so on. When we're talking about multi-model ChatGPT models with the new GPT-4 version, it can both take images, audio and text. So let's imagine that we take all the data from the internet. So we take the data set, feed it into a model, and our models is also very large. So we're talking about like billions of parameters, and some of them are up in several hundred billions of parameters, where it is basically just learning from that data. So there's really not more to it. Of course, we have the underlying architecture. I'm going to dive into it in a high level so you guys can understand how is it actually like learning from the internet, how does it know what to pay attention to, what should it filter out, what is the most important part and so on, and also how do we clean up the data. This is really good to understand when you're working with chatbots and also large language models, so you understand them, how they work under the hood. How are they generating responses? You'll get a better understanding of how you can use it, what it can be used for, and also where is it lacking. We need a model and then we need a huge GPU cluster. When we're just training a base model from scratch, like it requires tens of millions of dollars just to train a single model. So this is very expensive to train the base models, and then normally you will take a base model, fine tune it on more specific data sets and also on larger data sets, basically just to reduce cost and make them more specific. But we need the base model to start with, which has a basic understanding pretty much of the whole world. So we take the whole world, we take the data, text out there, different articles, websites, and then we basically train a model to learn a projection. So we project the real world down to a model with basically just a weight file, and all it comes down to with ChatGPT is a single file with the model architecture and a single file with the weights files. Then we take the weight files, load it into the model, build an interface around it, and then we have ChatGPT. So I've talked about a model and all it comes down to is a single architecture. Then we can have different variations of it and so on. We won't really dive into the details because then it will become very technical, but all the large language models, ChatGPT and so on, are built on top of this transformer architecture. So we have an encoder, we can encode the text, and we also have a decoder which can generate text. And then it's just an autoregressive task, which means that we take a word and then we just predict the next word in that sequence or in that sentence. And then if we take a sentence from a website, for example, we feed it the first 3 words. Then based on the data that we have from the website, it can then go in and predict what should be the 4th word in that sentence. And then it's just going to repeat that over and over again and generate this text or the responses that we get from ChatGPT. So this is basically the transformer architecture on a very high level. One of the advantages with the transformer architecture is also that it can work in parallel. So you can take a whole sequence, a whole sentence, throw it into the transformer architecture at the same time, where with the previous models, it had to take everything in a sequence. So word by word, now we can take a whole sentence, take a whole prompt, throw it into it, and then it's going to generate the response based on the data that it had learned from the internet. So that's pretty much it. And then we have a very important mechanism inside the transformer architecture, which is called the attention mechanism. It's basically just, if we boil it all the way down, we have something called queries, keys, and values. And all it comes down to is basically that we have some values, they are locked behind doors. We have some keys that can lock up those doors so we can get to the actual values or the treasuries behind those doors. And then we have our queries, they're learning basically just to figure out what key should we use to unlock the different values behind the doors. So those are basically all the parameters that we need to learn together with some standard feed-forward networks. We're talking billions of parameters that we need to go in and fine tune, and all we do is to run it through, take a look at the loss, how does it perform, and then we adjust all the weights back in the network again. So next time we generate a result, it's going to be better. So we're basically just increasing the probabilities based on the data that we feed into the model. So now we have the attention mechanism, we know how it works, we basically just have some queries, we need to figure out which key should we use to get the value. And how this works is that if we just take a sentence, it learns what to pay attention to. So this is very important to speed up the process, have higher probabilities, but most importantly of all, it knows how to reason about what it is actually like reading from the internet. It learns over time what is you pay attention to in the data. So it doesn't matter like what sentence you throw into it, could be like a whole article. So if we just take this example here, we have the FBI is chasing a criminal on the run. So first of all, we throw D into our transformer. It's not really going to pay attention to anything yet. We still need a bit more context. So it's just going to learn the context and what to pay attention to. So later stages here, we just keep feeding words into it. Again, we have different tokens and so on, but that is on a lower level. Right now, we're just feeding words into our model. But down on a lower level, we need to convert the text into numerical values, because all the stuff in the models, they work with numbers, also the outputs. And then at the end, we convert numbers back to text again. So right now we can see that once we start to feed words into our model, it learns what to pay attention to. So already after the third sentence, the FBI, it is paying more attention to FBI, is, and then once we get down to chasing, it pays more attention to chasing and also a bit still to FBI. D and is not really relevant. It is not paying attention to that as much any longer compared to before. So this is just how it incrementally learns what to pay attention to. So it has reasoning and understands both the prompt but also the output that is going to generate for you. So over time here at the end, we can basically see that chasing criminal run, and just from those words we already have a pretty good understanding of the whole sentence. So this is how ChatGPT works on the hood. There's nothing more to it. We have the transformer architecture, very large scale. We take the whole internet, project it down, train our model, and then we have these large language models. So once we have a base model, we can fine tune it into specific assistants. So ChatGPT is act like just a base model that is fine tuned into an assistant. And when we do that, we need this specific format where we have a user and then we have an assistant. So this is the prompt for the user, what is a neural network, and then the assistant. So this is the format of the data. We have our user input and then we have our assistant, which is the output from the transformer model or the large language model. So this is the format. What is a neural network? This is the user input, and then the assistant is supposed to write a neural network is blah, 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 and then all the explanation for what a neural network is based on the data that it got from the internet. So someone has to manually label all of this data here, combine it into a specific data set that they can then be used. So one way to improve the chatbot is to collect a huge amount of data, and also data written by humans. So how they're doing it is basically just, we generate some text, we generate some snippets, humans are going to correct it, but also write some of their own. But sometimes you use the model to get some baseline, and then you can go in and do modifications, because that is significantly easier and will save a ton of time compared to writing a whole articles, writing responses by yourself. Then we connect all of it together. Sometimes you're probably seen in ChatGPT, you get 2 responses. You can choose which of the responses that you want the most. And then it's just going to take that output, the one that you choose, feed it back into the system again. So they act like using you as a labeler to improve the model, to improve ChatGPT. So this is how it works. So this is pretty much all there is to chatbots and how ChatGPT works under the hood. It's really simple. It's not easy to do, but it works on a very high level, and that's where the complexity come in. So it's actually really important when you're using these tools to know how does the model work on the hood, what type of data is it trained on, how does it know about this specific thing here. We need our human labelers, so it's going to be based on that, but it's also just going to be based on some random articles from the internet, and then it's just going to generate it step by step or word for word. This is also why sometimes just out of the box with the large language models, ChatGPT, you just get some random stuff. It is basically hallucinating. So if it doesn't know the result, it is just going to generate a response anyway. So if you're looking for resources, code and so on, it doesn't know the answer. Sometimes it's just going to generate some random stuff that you can't really use. So thanks a lot for watching this video here. Definitely make sure to check out the other videos on the channel and also hit the subscribe button under the video. So this was a high level overview over how these ChatGPT models work. We could dive more into the details, but it will start to become very complex, and it's really important that you understand how these chatbots work on a high level, because at the end of the day, it is not as complex as it might look. And also just from all the stuff that it can generate, it is very impressive what it can do and how you can use it to improve yourself, your productivity in your daily life. So this was Neighborlife from Verpex, walking you through how chatbots work. Hope to see you guys in one of the upcoming videos. Until then, happy chatting.